So, hi everyone, and welcome to the third and the last part of the Monopoly example using calculus video series. And in this example, we're gonna start to really compare a perfectly competitive market to that of a monopolist. So, we'll start with this question. So, suppose government regulators require the monopolist to set the selling price at the perfectly competitive rate, okay? And because of the change in selling price, of course, that will change the output as well. And we're also asked at this price, what's the consumer surplus and what's the profit or the producer surplus if there's any, right? So let's identify those things here. So in a perfectly competitive market, okay, the FOC, okay, for the perfectly to derive the perfectly competitive price is defined as the price equal to marginal cost. So if you recall our videos from Perfect Competition and our lectures from there, this will be familiar to you. Okay, so since P is equal to 400 minus 20Q, okay, again, we can essentially equate that with our marginal cost, which we found out to be 40Q. Okay, so P equal to MC. Okay, we can equate the two. That's 400 minus 20Q equal to 40Q. Then transpose, so we have 400 equal to 60Q. Divide both sides by 60. We get Q, PC, 400 divided by 6, that's 6.6667 or 6.67 for short. Okay, and so that's gonna be the quantity in a perfectly competitive market. Now, what's the price? So we can just plug this in. So that's P is equal to 400 minus 20 times 6.67. And that's going to be equal to, so PPC, that's going to be equal to 266.67. Okay, that's going to be that. Okay, so that's the price and the output combination in a perfectly competitive market. If you'll notice, okay, if we try and draw a simple comparison, so say I'm going to create this sort of table here, and we have a monopoly, and then we have a perfectly competitive market. Okay, the price, okay, so the price in a perfectly competitive market is 266.67, and then the quantity is 6.67. In a monopoly, the price was 300 and the quantity was 5. So you'll notice that we can verify what we've been talking about in theory, and that is QM is essentially lower than QPC. Okay, so the perfectly competitive market will supply more, and the perfectly competitive market price is greater than is less than the monopolist's price. Okay, so those are things in theory that we should take note. So next, let's calculate consumer surplus. So consumer surplus is equal to integral Q is equal to 0, then Q is equal to QPC. So this is CSPC for a perfectly competitive market. Then we're going to use again our demand function. Okay, so that's PQ dq minus your PC times QPC. This is going to be equal to integral 0, then 6.67 of 400 minus 20Q dq minus 6.67 times 266.67. Okay, and if we simplify this, so if you get that integral, so that's going to be equal to 444, okay, 444.42. And this is your CSPC. Okay, so just solve for that integral in the same way that we solve for the consumer surplus of the monopolist. It's roughly the same procedure. Now, if you'll notice, okay, the consumer surplus under a monopolist, okay, that's going to be equal to 250. And now, okay, the consumer surplus is 444.42. So CSPC, which is equal to 444.42, is greater than CSM, which is equal to 250. And it shows that, it shows the income transfer and the loss in consumer welfare that we pointed out when we illustrated and compared a monopoly and a perfectly competitive market. Okay, so I hope those conditions are clear. Okay, then we can calculate for the producer surplus in a perfectly competitive market. So that's just profit, right? And that's equal to revenue minus cost. So this is going to be equal to, 6.67 times 266.67 minus, if you're going to solve for that, okay, minus our cost function. Our cost function in this problem is, our cost function is 20 times 6.67, that's our q squared, okay, minus 500, okay. So that's already in level form. Then if we solve for that, so 6.67 times 266.67, that's going to be equal to 1,778.6889 minus 20 times 6.67 squared. That's going to be equal to 889.778 minus 500. Then if we simplify everything, so if we simplify all of that, so 1778.6889 minus 889.778 minus 500, we're going to be left with 388.9109. So the producer surplus or the profit under a perfectly competitive market is 388.9109. Okay, now if you compare that, okay, so again, compare that equal to 388.9109. If you compare that to a monopoly, the profit of the monopolist was 500. So you'll notice that it does say, okay, you can see the income transfer from our higher consumer surplus in the case of a perfectly competitive market versus the lower one in a monopolist. We can see that income transfer trickle in because this is less than the profit of the monopolist, which is equal to 500. Okay. Then the last question is relative to the perfectly competitive market. Sorry, that's market. What is the deadweight loss to society? Okay, so how we answer this is we need to calculate for the social surplus under a perfectly competitive market or the welfare under a perfectly competitive market and compare it to the social surplus of a monopolist, okay, WM. And essentially, this is just going to be equal to PS, PC, or your producer surplus or profit, plus your consumer surplus, okay, PC. Then this one is going to be PSM plus CSM, okay. Then, so we can check back in this slide here. Okay, our CSPC is 442.42. So that's 442.42. Then the PS was 388.9109. 88.9109. Then for the monopolist, okay, consumer surplus was lower at 250. Okay, it was at 250, but 250. But the profit was higher at 500. Okay. So in here, this one is 750 for the monopolist. That's the social surplus of the monopolist. Then for a perfectly competitive firm, okay, that's going to be equal to 0.47. That's going to be equal to 831.3809. And this is the social surplus of the perfectly competitive market. Now, you should always note that the social surplus of a perfectly competitive market should always be greater than that of the monopolist. And to calculate deadweight loss is essentially the social surplus of the perfectly competitive market less the social surplus of the monopolist. So that's going to be 831.3809 minus 750. And if we get that, so minus 750, we're going to get 81 Okay, 81.33809. And that